We're all inspired by happy endings. I know that after my pregnancy loss, I would listen to the stories of other women and birthing people who experienced a loss and then had subsequent successful pregnancies because it was a reminder that that was also possible for me. In this episode, we hear the story of one of the birth warriors who I have had the pleasure of working with. Katie went through 2 years of trying to conceive, 2 years of fertility treatments, two failed IUIs, and of course, a lot of frustration in between. She's now the proud mama to a beautiful baby boy. And what I love about Katie's story is not just that she had a successful pregnancy, which in and of itself is a beautiful gift, but also that in the process of preparing her body for her next pregnancy, she reconnected with herself, she reconnected with nature, she reconnected with the earth on a deep and spiritual soul level. And this new relationship and this sense of wholeness is something that she will bring with her as she parents her child and as she moves in the world. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And without further ado, here's my interview with Katie. Welcome to another episode of Preparing for Pregnancy After Loss. I am here with Katie, who is beaming in pregnancy. She's 37 weeks pregnant this week, and so just like 3 more weeks, or potentially fewer, before or longer, before your little guy comes into the world. And the reason why we decided to do this episode together is because you've had what I would consider to be the birth warrior journey. So the pregnancy journey that isn't as easy as some pregnancies are. And I consider you to be a birth warrior. So we're here to capture that birth warrior journey, to capture your story. And I'll pause for now so that you can introduce yourself, and then we'll keep going.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so we've had the pleasure of knowing each other for a while now, even outside of this context. So, and we'll get into like how I, found you and your services later. But yeah, I'm 80. I'm 34 years old. Had been trying to conceive for technically 2 years. Prior to this successful pregnancy, and certainly learned a lot, not just about the ins and outs of fertility and the female reproductive system, which I feel like I could pass a state board test at this point, but also just about myself and resilience and grace, and just excited to share part of that journey with you today.
Nice. So take me back to the beginning of that journey, to when you decided that you wanted to become pregnant and the challenges that you found that was a part of that process.
Yeah, so I always knew I wanted babies. My grandma used to say, could always see me with a baby on my hip. Just with having a lot of cousins around and neighbors and babysitting. It was just a big part of my upbringing and my life. So it felt like it was the next step for me. And, I assumed that would happen much earlier in life than it did. But life always has different plans, and different relationships came and went, it all worked out perfectly. But I found myself at about 30, and it was getting to be the holiday season, and I thought, you know what, I want to start doing something that is going to at least set me up for the possibility, because I knew that I would probably have some problems. I've always had very irregular cycles, and though it's difficult to diagnose, I believe I have PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, which is hereditary. my family. So I knew that my mother and some other family members had struggled with fertility. And so I was very much bracing for it. So at about 30, I just decided to get off birth control, and was really using it more to just for keeping myself regular and what I was told was the healthy thing to do. Even though I had, a long-term partner at that time. So I got off birth control hoping that would help get me regular and on the right track. And then about, I would say 10 months later, we had since gotten married and our honeymoon, and it's like, okay, time to really start taking this seriously and start trying. And immediately I went to a fertility clinic. Pretty much like after the wedding and honeymoon, and once we were settled, I wasted no time. And so that is kind of how I start the clock of my infertility journey. Was that first, oh, that's my cat. my first appointment at a fertility clinic. And they did what I believe the kind of first pass for a lot of women is, do the blood work, do some routine testing, but essentially they put me on Clomid. And I had been on Clomid then for quite some time. I think I did about 8 cycles of it, which is usually not even advised because it can have some detrimental effects on your body. And we saw that. But I was very naive in thinking that, I just don't ovulate regularly. So all I need to do is take this magical pill and boom, I will be pregnant. And that didn't happen. And month over month, that didn't happen. So by the spring, I was really starting to feel upset, defeated. I think of the people who attended our wedding that September previous, 9 people had gotten pregnant, many of which were in our wedding party. So we were very, very happy for them, but we wanted that for ourselves as well. So it started taking its toll emotionally on me pretty significantly. And at, I think, I'm trying to think back to the timing now. So then at that point we, consulted with our doctor, and it was clear that this just wasn't working in and of itself. So we had to take a couple months off. That's when I started acupuncture and found just a wonderful, wonderful doctor and practitioner of acupuncture, very close to me, who kind of blended East and West medicine in her practice and in her education. So I would say that is really at one point when the drugs stopped working, I started opening myself up to the spiritual realm, the natural remedies, so essential oils and herbs and teas and acupuncture, and that kind of started me down a path of both, trying to conceive in a more holistic, natural way, but also a lot of self-healing. And working with my acupuncturist, she was, it was just such a beautiful experience.
Yeah.
Because some days she would say, you're feeling sad today, you're feeling tired, you're feeling stressed. Mm-hmm. And so she really started getting me to think, what if this isn't just about the science of your reproductive system? Mm-hmm. And it's more holistic about your mind, body, and spirit and how those work together. So I continued with her and continued with the fertility clinic. And we got to a point then where we moved on to IUIs, or intrauteral insemination. And the first one I had ended up resulting in a chemical pregnancy. And so that was just like absolutely crushing for me. This was about, oh man, it's hard now to like know exactly the time frame of when. This was probably like a year and 3 months or so, 4 months, 5 months into the infertility journey. And so I, after the procedure, we did the weight. I got 2 faint lines. And you were with me around that time when I was waiting, actually, if you remember. It was really trying because I was around a lot of pregnant women. It was kind of, if you remember, in my face, frankly. And so it was really hard for me to find peace at that time and just relax and be calm. And I felt like I was just like screaming on the inside, like I need to get away. I need to do something to calm myself and ground myself. And I just didn't have that outlet. So I'm plugging away, kind of like thinking of this in the back of my mind constantly. I got that faint line, was like just, sheer joy, tears, everything. The next day, the clinic had me come in for blood work, which was like then a Friday. So we spent the whole weekend thinking, it finally worked. Even ended up traveling to see my family where I'm from, and share the news with them. And then Monday afternoon we got the call, and they said, actually you're not pregnant. And so I always think back to just that phone call and how terrible it was, but then I also use that to think of women who have had much later term miscarriages and got to really connect with their baby and live with their pregnancy for months, and just how hard that is. And I just had a long weekend, so I do try, and I think another side note is that the infertility has always given me so much perspective on, again, this grace, knowing that so many people are in this struggle with you, and have it worse even. So finding ways to practice gratitude in your daily life started to become really important. And so after that chemical pregnancy, I started thinking, okay, I need to do something different mentally, because I'm becoming like bitter and angry, and that's not good for anybody. So I started like gratitude practices. I really started more with my meditation and mindfulness. I was doing yoga, but I was starting to find more yin yoga practices, and not just more kind of strengthening yoga. I started finding a lot of inspiration and support on Instagram, actually. You have a great page, Natalie, but there's a lot of, pages that offer a splash of like comedy and levity with helpful resources, just storytelling and sharing. And I found those online communities so helpful. So I didn't feel alone anymore. And I felt like a sense of solidarity. And that really that started helping with like what I would call just like a shift in attitude. So practicing gratitude, finding this online community of support, And then continuing with that acupuncture and this kind of like metaphysical, spiritual, natural, holistic remedies, all I think was a part of a shift for me. That I started and have kept with me throughout this pregnancy. After our first failed IUI, we went back to the drawing board with my doctor. The option was to like do it again, which meant lots of shots. It's just kind of like, it's not a fun process, right, for anybody. Even more so if you have to do IVF, and then, or to like take pause and just take a break. My acupuncturist was like, if you were my daughter, I would be telling you to take a break. Your body is not ready. You are not ready. Like you have just feeling the energy currents in my body. She said, like, it is not the right time. And she also said, the drugs that I have been putting in my body for such a prolonged period of time are having its effect, and you need a chance to heal. Yeah. But I am a stubborn as hell, impatient Aries. So I was like, no, we're going to go ahead and do number 2. I'm not giving up yet. I'm not throwing in the towel. So we went right back the next month and tried this for a second IUI. And it did not work. Mm-hmm. As she so wisely predicted. So then I was like, all right, let me just hold up. So we're about 1.5 years into our infertility journey at this point. And I was like, I need a hard pause. I need to not think about trying, to not think about getting pregnant. I just need to like heal. And so that is what we did for the majority of us, the whole spring and summer seasons, which I think those were healthy, good seasons for me to do that, because nature is a really important part of my life and my husband's life and how we spend our time together. So it really enabled me to just like almost liberate myself and go outside and use adventure and exploring the world as this, well, if I had a baby, I couldn't be doing this right now. And that was always something I like to go back to. Whenever we would get that negative test, or my cycle would come, or my period would come, I would be like, okay, where are we going this weekend? Let's get in the car, let's hop on a plane. I don't care. Let's make it happen. So, that was a helpful coping mechanism. But about a month after that second failed IUI, we went on this incredible backpacking trip to the Grand Canyon and Zion National Parks out west. And so truly, just living under the stars, packing our own shelter and meals, and getting our water supply from the earth, and experiencing that for a little over a week really was just such a beautiful experience and release. And again, because I knew, like, if I were either, with child or had a baby, I couldn't be doing this right now. And what a gift this was. And also very humbling in a way that Mother Nature has been around for a really long time, knows what she's doing, and have trust and have faith. Also this, and I don't mean for this to sound diminishing, but I'm very small compared to this huge world and the history of our planet. And so don't take yourself so damn seriously, Katie. Seriously. Like, the buck doesn't stop with you. Just keep, find ways to enjoy life. There's so many ways to enjoy life. And again, the healing properties of nature. and the earth, and just letting that kind of totally immerse your body and spirit. So got back from that trip like super refreshed. And the deal my husband and I made was he gets to pick a trip and I got to pick a trip. And he really wanted to do like the Southwest, which is like dry and arid and rocky and really, you know, has its own very unique properties. I really wanted the Pacific Northwest. So I wanted like the lush and the green and the fog. And so that was then our next trip that we had planned in like 3 or 4 months down the road. So essentially, like second failed IUI happened a month later. We went to that trip I just explained. We had the whole summer of, me connecting with friends, going on camping trips or hikes, or just trying to like live in the moment. I'm also taking like Chinese herbs from my acupuncturist and seeing her regularly and doing essential oils and drinking special teas and practicing my yoga and nurturing my body in so many different ways. And you know from everything that I read and listen to the conversations with friends, I was really like focused on healing that whole summer, and trying not to think about being pregnant, getting pregnant, anything like that. And seeing if I could get regular periods and just seeing what would happen. So then we find ourselves coming up to the second trip, the one that I had planned and really had my heart set on. So we're in Seattle. I connect with like my longest childhood friend who's living out there now. Then we go and have a 5-day backpacking experience in Olympic National Park, which took us from rainforest to mountain to sleeping on the Pacific coast. It was phenomenal. It was my favorite trip I had ever taken. Yeah, and it was a hardcore backpacking trip. I mean, we like our asses were kicked. We were stinky. We were climbing mountains. We were like muddy. We were bruised, but it was badass.
Yeah.
I loved it. We saw elk and bear and starfish and just so incredible. And on the very last night, we were sleeping on the beach of the Pacific Ocean. And it like felt different. And the next day I woke up and I'm like, I think I ovulated.
Oh my gosh. You knew that in your body, or you could sense that in your body.
And I had never been able to do that before in my life, because just being irregular and I think out of tune with my body. And, essentially people were shoving birth control down my throat at 15, 16 years old. My body, I don't think, ever had a chance to really figure itself out and normalize itself. So like a lot of people say, after you ovulate, your nipples can be sensitive, or there's clearly telltale signs within a woman's body. I was always oblivious to all of that, and I knew. And I have all the fancy gadgets, of course, to confirm ovulation. And sure as shit, I did. I ovulated. And so I was like, that didn't result in a pregnancy, but I was feeling like, wow, okay, I am like, my body, I'm getting in tune with my body. Like things are maybe syncing up. And so that was the end of September. When we got back and settled and everything, we actually started going to a different clinic at the advice of my acupuncturist and some others, a fresh start with a new doctor. And essentially, long story short, my first at bat with an IUI through them resulted in my baby boy.
Hey, Birth Warrior, I hope you've been enjoying this episode. We continue the conversation within the Birth Warrior Facebook community. It's a safe and sacred space with others on their journey to healing, to strength, and resilience. I share practices that will help you to overcome the emotional wounds that are left after loss or infertility, and whenever you're ready, tools to help you to prepare for your next pregnancy. I also host a Facebook Live and Q&A within the community every Wednesday where I discuss the topics that are important to you. This Birth Warrior journey was not meant to be traveled alone, and you do not deserve to be suffering in silence. Check the show notes for the link to join our tribe. We're the Birth Warrior community on Facebook, and we are looking forward to seeing you.
Yeah. Almost 2 years to the date, that first fertility appointment was the appointment that did the trick.
Gosh.
Every day, so it was really crazy. We had to drive there. We were like, it was snowing, 6 a.m. We're in this parking lot.
Yeah.
The dog is in the car with us because we're traveling for Thanksgiving, so we're having to take turns going in and out of the car in the parking lot. When he has to go in, when I have to go in, it was very comical. And then, my acupuncturist was like, I want to make sure you're relaxed. I want you to just drink a green juice smoothie and just put your feet up and relax. And you do not know my family. And what I'm about to walk into on Thanksgiving, there's no relaxing to be had. Yeah.
Wow, that story is incredible. And I love the new awareness that you were having in your body. I love when you knew that shift, you knew within your body, I'm sensing something. And of course, the technology confirmed it. So during the trip, what other shifts were you noticing in your body? Could you notice if you had become more relaxed, or were there other things that were feeling different in your body during that trip?
I think, well, it's interesting because you're so focused on the physical exertion at times that you don't get caught up in anything else. You're one step in front of the other. Don't fall off this cliff and die. Just I don't want to sound dramatic, but in a way, you're just surviving. That's the kind of point, to survive outside in the wild and connect to those kind of just our most fundamental roots. But I can say there were a few moments leading up to that shift where the one night where we stayed, it was on the banks of this kind of like a pond, a lake, surrounded by cliffs. And we were the only people there. And around sunset, I went out and sat by myself and found a little rock to sit on, kind of in the water shore, and meditated for a while. And I just felt so light, and I did not, life was good. Everything was okay. And then later that night, once the sun went down, it was really dark. We could see every star in the sky. And because it was such a remote place, there's no light pollution. And this was a very popular site for backpackers to stay at. And somehow we were the only ones there. And it just felt like this once in a lifetime moment. And I remember all that, every moment of that evening so well. I felt like it was transformational. And then had a few similar experiences like that, where you know, we rise over this crest and the fog is lifting and we saw this like majestic elk, and like just at that time, like a ray of sunlight was shining down on him through the clouds breaking up, and just like these really, really like, holy shit, is this our life right now? Moments. So between the like just focusing on one foot in front of the next, and then just being able to step back and filling your heart and soul with so much gratitude, there was no room for anything else. Like, you know?
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. So I really, you know, believe that that is, at least for me, that is what it took. I had to like get outside of my mind. I had to like nourish my soul and my spirit, to heal myself first.
Because everything is working together.
Absolutely. Yeah. And my acupuncturist said the same thing. She had lived out west for a while, and she had told me how she would go to the Grand Canyon and drive all the time to sit in the Grand Canyon, and she would always reinforce these sentiments that I would share with her. And, you know, when I got back, she would say, "You're doing better. You're more relaxed." She would confirm, and without even me like provoking it by sharing what I was sensing as a shift, she would go ahead and acknowledge that herself. So it definitely kind of confirmed what I was thinking, and I was really grateful to have. Well, I needed a boost from Western medicine. I was really, really grateful to have her and acupuncture and the other like supplemental healing in my life, because I don't think I could have gotten there just with the clinical stuff.
Yeah. Something that's interesting about how, I guess, conventional Western medicine is practiced is they focus on the physical. So they say humans have a physical body, so they treat what's physical with something physical. So they never really go under the surface and talk about your spirit, your energy, your emotions, because they deal with what's physical, right?
And I wanted that, and you know, I think that if I could you know, share that with any warrior on her own journey, my advice would be to find that balance in whatever that looks like for you. You know, it doesn't have to be going on like crazy backpacking trips out west. Certainly not. You know, you know, maybe it's Reiki.
Yeah.
It's you. It's diving into a good book, having a good conversation. You know, it's but just find that balance to nurture your body and your soul. I think it's really important.
Whew, have to pause there. Such a journey and such a story. So as you're here and are looking back, is there anything that you would have done differently?
Yeah, as I alluded to, I am definitely that Aries Ram, full throttle, no patience kind of person. So I feel like I was like, okay, I want to get pregnant. Time to call a clinic, get me on some meds, let's do it. And I would have slowed that roll a little bit. And honestly, I mean, hindsight's 2020. I don't want to say I have regrets because it wouldn't have been this baby at this time. But I think getting off birth control, probably even years before I did, would have been a good step. And starting some more of that healing that I had talked about. um, and I want to say that that's it's not a practice that you should stop once you get your result, whether it's that pregnancy or it's that job or passing that exam or whatever goal you have. I think it's a lifelong practice. So having incorporated that practice into my life sooner rather than later, of course, would have been nice. But the most practical thing I can think of would be to have gotten off birth control and letting my body start the process of healing itself.
And for those who might be listening and don't know what the impact is of birth control on the body or on fertility later in life, share more about that.
Yeah, and I'm no medical expert, so I can't speak too clinically about it. But how it was explained to me by my acupuncturist was that, my body was a little irregular, and I was born that way. And when I was a young adolescent, doctors kind of tried to correct that by putting me on birth control at a very young age when it, according to my acupuncturist, and I would tend to agree, might not have been necessary because, in effect, my body never had the opportunity to self-correct.
Mm-hmm.
So perhaps by my early to mid 20s, my cycle would have gotten regular by itself. And I, as a transient person going to school, living in different states and cities, and I would get off it and on it and then on different kinds. And I think it just threw a hell of a lot at my body. And I just never, I think we take that for granted. Like the availability of prescription drugs is so easily accessible that, like, do we ever stop and think, like, what is this really doing to our bodies? And what is the long-term effect of some of that? And are there other options? Like maybe not like the easy quick fix, but what are some other solutions to heal my body naturally? I think that's how I've learned that, like, to orient and question, have that disposition with everything now, so even if I get a headache, before I pop some Tylenol, can I have some tea, or do I just need to rest for a minute, or am I not drinking enough water, or so yeah, I think that was what birth control did, was a potential harm that birth control had for me and other women that I've talked to, and what I've heard from my acupuncturist and some others. But I think it's also just a healthy orientation to kind of think that through, and a variety of our lifestyle choices.
For another birth warrior who is on the fertility journey and has probably done a few cycles that haven't been successful and now feel like they might not even have the strength to keep going, what advice would you offer to that person?
Oh, so many things. Don't compare yourself with anybody else. It has to be like number one. And that was so hard for me because I kept seeing them drop like flies. My friends, coworkers, acquaintances, all getting knocked up. And I would say, why not me? And I would be, the triggers that we often hear about, and you can really get caught up and you can become bitter and just recoil into this ball, and do whatever you can to not go there would be my advice. For me, it was getting off Facebook. It, again, just like the backpacking, like that isn't going to work for everybody, so you do you. But like don't be afraid to prioritize what you need to do, protect yourself, and don't be apologetic for that.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned essential oils earlier.
Yeah.
I had a interview with someone just yesterday who like helps. She sells essential oils through doTERRA and helps people to choose the right ones based on like what's going on in their body. So I'd love to hear about your experience using essential oils. Like which ones resonated with you and how did you use them?
Yeah. So at first I used it more as like aromatherapy. I loved bergamot and lang lang, really like all of these sweet citrus smells for calming. I diffused them. I had roller balls I would put on my skin. And I would also have the porous bracelets that I could wear, and then it would just kind of like always ground me. And I try to also use them intentionally with like chakras and my sacral chakra, or while I was meditating or doing yoga. Um, and then I did get into some others that were specifically for progesterone, um, progesterone development, I guess. There's like sweet yam extract that is supposed to be really helpful for that. Um, so I I purchased some specifically for infertility that would like help with your progesterone production. Those are, you're not so really supposed to use that with other fertility drugs or efforts. So like you have to be kind of careful when you use them and how you use them. But it got to the point where it's hard to say like what specifically worked. I think another thing I did was I drank a lot of pomegranate juice. I ate pineapple core. I had my raspberry leaf tea. I consume maca powder in like smoothies or like yogurt, stuff like that. So I did like a whole blend of all of those. I don't know if one did it or one didn't do it. But there's something I think to be said about the psychology of taking steps that you feel are empowering you and that are healthy. So, like, some people call that all like wish wash, old wives' tales. But, like, if it's making you feel better and it can't hurt because it's giving your body all of these nutrients, or it's making you feel calm, or it's making you feel in control, then just go ahead and do it, girlfriend.
Yeah. And as we know, the mind, body, and spirit are all intertwined. So if using incense is nourishing your spirit, then yeah, go ahead.
Right.
Right.
Block out the noise of the outside world. Yeah.
So you're now pregnant. When you just learned that you were pregnant, what emotions were coming up for you?
Well, because of that, like false pregnancy, I was much more reserved than I was the first time. But it was different because even before taking that test, my breasts were tender. I was really out of breath walking my dog. And so I had a feeling. I remember specifically, like, I called my husband because he was still at work, rather than like waiting for him to come home and having like a really special moment. Because I was like, you know what, this doesn't work out. Like we're gonna keep it cool. We're gonna keep it cool. So I was just like, keep it cool, like, and try not to get too high. Try to just keep it even. But it was really hard because like I was like doing a little dance inside the whole time, right? But then I think at like the 7-week, because I was going through a fertility clinic, they do an early ultrasound, look for a heartbeat. So I had that heartbeat, and that was really reassuring. And then we had the ultrasound at like 10 or 11 weeks. And that's when I was like, okay, this is really real. And so progressively in that first trimester, I was allowing myself to feel joy and accept, like, you're going to be a mama now. It's happening more and more. But it was just so much disbelief. Like, like, is it actually happening? Because you get to a point where you don't think it ever will.
Wow. Okay, so you're pregnant in a very interesting time. You know, the shifts and the transformations happening in our world right now. I don't think we've ever seen some of them. So what is it like to be pregnant in this time that we're living in?
Yeah. Which it's especially challenging because I'm having a white boy, and I am going to want the absolute best for him. I want him to get into the best schools or have the best job, but my work has been so rooted in social justice and equity, and so it's and all of that is really in the spotlight right now, and with the Black Lives Matter movement, and hoping to God there's a major transformational shift in our society. So it's been really interesting, like holding space for this human I'm growing, and yet wanting nothing more but for there to be space for others. So I've been able to connect with other mothers of white boys who share my kind of disposition in the world or my line of work, and it's sweet. They're just like, for so much of this work, it's going to take the people in privilege to own the privilege, to make room. And so the more people we have raising white men the right way, the better our world is going to be. So then I was like, okay, that's how I'm going to look at this. So that helped. Not that we're rich. I mean, not that, he's got a whole lot to work with, but that really helped kind of, not that I don't want it to sound like it was just a weird thing, so that really kind of helped me frame it. And then, just, it's really scary with, is he going to have a world to enjoy? I just spent so much time talking about nature and the environment, and what is that going to look like for him? And I mean, I could go down the list, from gun control to social justice, to just this fragile state of our democracy and public health. I could go down the list, but I think the sentiment that I've heard is that the new generation coming up, and then even the babies or the yet to be born people, are going to have such a better outlook, and are going to truly be the ones that save humanity, that save our planet in so many ways. So I think you have to be optimistic, because what choice do we really have? To be anything other than optimistic and full of hope is to give up. And I don't want to raise a little boy that gives up. I want to raise a fighter and a hellraiser. And and so, I'm more powered than ever to be like, hey, you were born at a specific time for a specific reason. Not that you are the Messiah, so let's not get too big of a head. But you and your friends are going to have some work to do. And I'm going to raise you the best I can. So you're empowered to get to work when the time is right.
I love that so much. Wow. Ah, spoken like a true warrior.
Right. That is right.
All right. So we're working together in the Coaching for Birth Warrior program. So what is it that inspired you to reach out?
Yeah, I think the journey and the shift I took in the midst of my infertility and finding um, relief and comfort and healing in the metaphysical, in the mind body connection space, and seeing how that served me was really the main motivator. Knowing you personally, knowing your work, I knew that it would serve me well.
Yes, yes. And
Yeah,
your experience been so far?
it's just been beautiful, Natalie. And every session, something new comes up, and I think not going into it with an agenda has been this opened up this beautiful process of like discovery where you and I kind of go into something together and we don't know what's going to come up, and um, we roll with it. We have fun with it. We're curious together, and it's such a safe and sacred space where I can really feel vulnerable, and I have the permission to just see what comes up. And it's been really transformational. As I've said, there's things that are in my subconscious that I don't even realize that you have helped kind of extract that needed to come up. And once they did, like, we gave that space and we sat with it and we were curious about it. And then, it was like I just became lighter afterwards.
Oh, I'm so grateful to hear that, and even more grateful to be able to work with you. I
Yeah.
look forward to our session every single time that we have a session. Like, oh yeah, I get to see Katie today.
Yeah, me too.
So going back to camping, what I'm remembering is just how connected you are to nature.
Yeah.
And within our sessions, without sharing the details of the sessions, there, like, that connection to nature has come up. Is that was surprising for you, like going into this new practice of somatic therapy and seeing how your body speaks and the imagery and what comes up for you? Was that surprising?
Yeah, I wasn't expecting it, but I think it was really validating. And without getting into all the details, there was one session when I used moss
Hmm.
analogy, and that really stayed with me. And I thought about that over the next couple days. And I'm just, it like really validates, like, this is where I feel most connected to myself. And, this is where you go to seek out peace and sustenance in your life. And it's kind of always been like that for me since I was a little girl. And I don't think I ever gave it the real significance that it deserves in my life until working with you on that therapy.
And I think it really just reinforces not even the idea, but the knowing that the mind, body, and spirit are connected. You know, imagery to come to you and for you to connect to it in a very deep place. And then there's something that shifts in the body, once you reconnect with that. It's just such a beautiful practice.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's so grounding, and knowing the wisdom that our body carries in itself is so empowering. And you just help me access that wisdom that I didn't even know was there.
It's like magic. It's hard to explain what the practice is without someone experiencing it. It's so hard to give all the words to what the full experience is. But
And especially that you're able to do this so artfully virtually is amazing. You know, I really thought that we would have to be, you know, in the same room, physically present with one another for it to work, but that was not the case.
what is your hope for your son?
Uh, I I hope that he is free to be his original self
Mm,
in the world.
yeah. That's powerful. All right. What is your hope for our world?
Oh, there's so many things. No, I hope that the shift we're experiencing as a society right now has a long-term positive effect on the way we treat each other, on the way we treat our planet, and the way we progress as a society, really. I hope that if everybody had more of a mind-body connection and a connection to the natural world, I believe that so many of our ills would be taken care of. We would tread lightly on this planet. We would hold one another in a much higher regard. So perhaps a more simpler way to say it would be that I hope people are able to find more empathy and this idea of like oneness in their hearts and in their bodies. I think that would solve a lot of our ills.
All right. Final question. What makes you a birth warrior?
Oh, well, you know, I want to be like, oh, I'm not a birth warrior. There's so many other women who have had such harder times than me. But I've been reading a lot of awesome books where it's like, no, don't do that. I think what makes me a birth warrior is that I came to a crossroads where I could have been defeated or bitter or angry, or I could have found this as an opportunity to grow interpersonally and spiritually, and I chose that road. And I think now as I'm approaching birth and motherhood, that will serve me and that will serve my baby indefinitely.
Oh, you almost made me tear up there. Well, birth warrior, it is such an honor to know you. And thank you for sharing your story with me today.
Oh, you're welcome. And thank you for all of the work you've done with me. I'll carry it for a lifetime.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Preparing for Pregnancy After Loss. If you heard anything today that was inspiring or helpful, please share this episode with someone else you know on their birth warrior journey. Together, we can strengthen and empower each other.